what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 68 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name's Kyle Sutherland, and we will bring in the baseball guru, Kevin Bohannon, shortly. I want to apologize about last week. We were not able to do a show, mainly because we have about 2 days a week where between my schedule, Cabo's schedule, and then on the softball side, Jared's schedule mesh, and that's usually about Sunday or Monday. And, you know, we try to do it at the beginning of each week, obviously. And due to my power being out for about 2.5 days, we were not able to do that. But we will bring in Kevin Bohannon as we return to bring you some baseball content. Kevin, I guess the last time we were on, we recapped the Robinson Invitational, the 8th annual Robinson Invitational, which was a massive success at 8 different locations across central Arkansas. And not a lot of course, in 2 weeks, we have had some things that we're going to discuss, but not a lot of majorly shocking stuff. But I think this is the time of year that you start to really find out which teams are separating themselves. But also you've got prom, you got graduation, you got all kinds of getting ready for summer ball. There's all kinds of things that we're getting ready to do. So you still have your upsets and maybe some of those head scratching results as we have in both baseball and softball.
That's absolutely. And you start to see the contenders from the pretenders, and conference races are getting really close right now. And that's the fun part about this. And, as we go through each classification, we'll talk about which conferences have a clear-cut favorite and which conferences maybe 5 or 6 teams could win it. So really excited about that. Not too much has changed in terms of the teams that are, sitting towards the top. Those teams have already established themselves, and none of them have really fallen off yet. So we'll get to talk about it as we get in every classification here.
Before we do get started, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube if you prefer to watch, or if you want to listen. We're on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of those. We are there. Also, some quick love to the people who make this possible, starting with Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, also known as AFS, in the top left corner. Whether lip removal and edging or any other needs for natural surfaces, called Jeremy Rice and his crew at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218. Also, Boom Boom Floor Shine, serving all of Southwest Arkansas. You need some TLC for your VCT or any other maintenance for your VCT flooring, call Boom Boom Floor Shine, 870-833-0521. And then last but not least, Chinook Cedary. Head over to ChinookCedary.com. Check out all 8 flavors that they have. You can get the sampler pack or big bags of any of the 8 flavors. You can hit or type in NSS Media as a referral code for 10% off of your order, not just your first order, any order. So now let's get into it. Starting in 6A, Kevin, I know that, it seems like just about every classification, every time that we've ever done this, we kind of start off with the team that's been the hottest. And I actually got asked the other day, who is the best team in the state? And I said, well, like overall, of course. I'm like, well, I don't know quite as much. I mean, I keep up with the baseball side, obviously, but I'm maybe not quite as in-depth as I am with softball. And my immediate response was Conway. That's kind of my automatic response, not just because they're 6A. I mean, last year, with that title, I think we probably would agree belonged to Valley View. But right now, as we started in 6A, we'll start with our number 1 team that remains undefeated, and that is the Conway Wampus Cats.
That's exactly right. And they, ran into a little bit of a scare last week against Russellville. They had to come back in that game. Of course, Russellville's been in our top 5 of our Super 7 rankings all year long, as high as number 2. Dropped some conference games, which, end of the week, 6A, 5A school playing each other, you're not going to get the guys that would throw in a conference game. So you get some other guys throwing, and, Conway came back and won that game 11-8. It showed Russellville had some offense, which is what they really need because they had really good pitching and defense. So, but Conway just keeps finding a way to win. They're 8-0 in conference, 16-0 overall, and they got a good schedule coming up to where, if they take care of business, they got Cabot coming up again, Bryant, they'll be in the driver's seat to get that 1 seed. And, as we talk about in 6A, it's always important to get that first or second spot in conference because that gives you a bye into the round of 8 in the Class 6A playoff. So, yeah, the surprise right now, Bryant's really started to play well lately. They've jumped up to third place in the 6A Central. They had a rough start to the year. They lost their first conference game to North Little Rock. Well, them and North Little Rock have really kind of changed places right now. North Little Rock started out 5-1. They're 7-7 overall right now. Estes is still throwing well, but they're getting into games where they lose 7-4. Just can't quite get their offense going. So we got a lot of stuff in the 6A Central to kind of figure out for those 3 through 6 spots. Cabot dropped a game to Catholic. That was a huge win for the Catholic Rockets. Anytime they got Caleb Short on the mound, they're going to be tough to deal with. So Jonesboro still hanging in there right now. It's going to be a battle for that 4, 5, 6 spot, Kyle. And, as we go to the 6A West, man, as you talk about, it's always so much fun to watch this conference because they do it in a way where you play a home-and-home doubleheader each week, Monday and Tuesday. So we always know what's going to happen every week. You're going to get, an ace on Monday and an ace on Tuesday. Hardly ever see ace against ace, which is really weird. We saw – couple weeks ago, Fort Smith Northside beat Fayetteville 1-0, where McLean Moody threw a one-hit shutout. Well, Fort Smith Northside's really dropped by the wayside. If Moody's not on the mound, they really can't win. Harbor beat them pretty good last week. They're 2-7 in conference play, so they've dropped off a little bit. Bentonville's 5-6. Bentonville West, who's been a surprise, is 6-6. Then you got Harbor, Rogers, Fayetteville, and Rogers Heritage, all within 2 games of each other. Heritage, Fayetteville, and Rogers all have 2 losses in conference play right now. So we're going to go down to the last week of the season in that conference, figure out who's the champ.
I wanted to ask you, since we were talking about the West, I wanted to talk about that matchup between Fayetteville and Harbor. Now, of course, as we're recording on a Tuesday, as you said, they're going to play that second game today. But Monday, Fayetteville got the 3-0 shutout over Harbor. Brissy was great, 10 strikeouts, completely went the entire distance, only allowed 2 hits. And then Landon Schaefer playing short. Also had multiple hits along with Camden Rogerson. So, I know that Harbor was one of those that we're kind of expecting. They're always in the mix, and they're going to be in that mix again. So, I know that we don't want to harp too much on the game that's going to happen, and then by the time that this drops, that it'll already have been played. But Fayetteville just continuing. We talked about Conway clicking on all cylinders in the Central. Fayetteville doing what we expected them to do.
Yeah, and they ran into some issues against Rogers that, for their other conference loss. I mentioned Northside was the other one. But Rogers, they're 7-2 right now, 12-4 overall. They got Jake Taylor on the mound. They got some other guys that are playing good baseball. So as they go along, they're going to be able to beat people. They're going to be a state title contender just like they have been under Matt Melson. So that wasn't a bad loss, a 5-2 loss. Landon Schaefer went out with a hamstring injury. He was throwing a no-hitter against Rogers up until that point. So Fayetteville Harbor round 2 tonight on Tuesday as we're recording this. If Fayetteville can get that win, that puts them in a really good spot to get one of those top 2 spots.
And also, real quick, before we move down to 5A, I wanted to bring back up Cabot because they went 4-0 last week, had that big 6-4 win over Bryant. I think I said Cabot. Bryant beat Cabot is what I was meaning, 6-4 on Tuesday. And then Bryant beat North Little Rock 6-2 on Thursday. So they've got Conway this week. And is that maybe a matchup? And as you mentioned about the Russellville game, Conway was kind of on their heels a little bit. Are you looking more so to see how Bryant competes in this one? They very well, who knows, they could come out on top, but is it more so just kind of looking like how they compete against the number 1 team in the state right now?
It is, because last year, these 2 teams are in reverse spots. Bryant had kind of rolled through the season last year up until the last week. And Conway just kind of snuck up and got them as the young team. Well, Bryant's kind of changed, a little change right now. So while Bryant does have some older guys like Ridge and Eli Berry, they've got some younger guys that are coming along as well. So Bryant can play well, put themselves in a spot over these last 3 weeks. They could get that number 2 seed. I think Conway's just too far out in front right now. They're 1.5 games clear of Little Rock Christian. Which you might as well call that 2 games. So Conway still has some big games. They just got to take care of business. And Leighton Harden, and I love coaches that are even keel. They never get too high, never get too low. it's always fun to go out there and watch the rah-rah coach and everything because they keep their kids up. But Leighton Harden is kind of like Dave Van Horn in the fact he never gets too high, never gets too low, and his teams don't either. And that's one thing. These kids go out and they just keep going, keep taking care of business. They're never out of a game. So, yeah, it could be a really good matchup. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to try to get out there.
The 5A West heading down to Class 5A, that's always a topic of discussion, and it's really interesting right now. I mean, it coming into this week, so Harrison and Greenwood were both 5-1. Alma and Russellville 4-2, right behind Harrison and Greenwood. If I'm not mistaken, I think Harrison and Greenwood have a series at the end of either the end of this month or beginning of May. So it's at the end of the month. And then Alma lost both of their games to Greenwood by a run. Play Russellville in a doubleheader this week, and then of course, again, we're recording on a Tuesday, and then Monday, Van Buren beat Greenwood 8-6. Weston Wilcox had a great start. It went I think it was 5.5 or 5.1 innings, little over 5 innings, and then went 4 for 4 at the plate with 2 RBIs. So, and then Russellville beat Alma 5-2. So the West is wild once again.
Yeah, and 5 1/3 innings, great outing by Wilcox. That's what we expected out of him. We had Van Buren ranked or right on our outside looking in at the top of the season when everything started. Harrison's been the one that's really kind of overachieved and got to where they're at right now. They beat Mountain Home 5-3 yesterday. So Mountain Home, great start. Now they're 2-5 in conference play. So the key with this conference is Siloam Springs is really the only team that's out of it at this point. They're 0-7. Siloam Springs is not a good not a good baseball program. So you got 7 teams that are playing for a playoff spot for 4 spots. Okay, we saw it last year. Greenwood was kind of the front runner with everything, and then at the end of the year, they had some injuries. They kind of just lost their mojo, and things kind of fell by the wayside. Farmington, they're young, but they had a terrible start to the year. They're 5-12 overall, but they're 4-3 in conference play. They swept Mountain Home in their first conference series of the year. So, yeah, I think Russellville, Greenwood, and Harrison, those are my 3 right there that I would just about bet money they make the state playoffs. The 4th spot's really up in the air. Van Buren's kind of the dark horse. They had a rough schedule up at the front, though. They lost 2 to Greenwood, so maybe the back end of their schedule sets up nice for them. If they can get to 8-6, they have to win 6 of the next 7. That may get them into the playoffs.
A couple of games I noticed from the Central last week. Sylvan Hills has been one of those 5A schools. It's kind of, I think, maybe teetered on the back end of the Super 7, kind of between there and outside looking in. North Little Rock been that same way in 6. Almost, I'm still in football mode. 6A, not 7 this year. The Bears notched 11 hits in a 15-4 victory over the Charging Wildcats last week. That was one that stuck out to me. And then also, and I don't know the exact story in this one, but Valonia kind of quietly beat 4A number 1 Harding Academy 10-9. I saw there were 8 total pitchers used in that one, 5 for Harding Academy. Yeah. Do you know much of the story on that one?
Yeah, that's a couple of coaches that have known each other for a long time, Brad Wallace and Shane Fullerton, just having a good midseason non-conference matchup. So you get those games. I don't put too much credence on them because you got a lot of guys that are trying to get work in. If you have a rough conference week that week, if you got 2 teams that you're going to beat the brakes off of and you're not getting in a lot of work, that's a good time to get in that kind of work. So Valonia's played well. They started out 3-1. They lost the last couple of ones. Team to watch out for in the Central is BB. Every coach I talked to, and I've talked to Coach talk to just about everybody, especially the contenders in the 5A Central. They say, BB scares me. They just scare me. And, I talked to Chance Cleveland, sophomore Clayton Ballard. We talked about him a little bit before. Going into last week, 23 innings pitched, 47 strikeouts, 8 walks. He's got a 1.5 ERA. Teams are only hitting 154 against him. So, lefty, tons of movement. The type of guy that's going to give teams fits if he stays in the zone. So they got a big matchup with Maumelle coming up. That's really going to set the pace in that conference. Maumelle's had an easy schedule so far. They played the 3 worst teams in the conference so far. Now you got Benton, BB, Sylvan Hills to wrap up the season. Should be really, really good because BB's already split with Sylvan Hills and Benton. Beebe's got a good shot. If they can beat Maumelle, they could creep up into that 2 spot, which is really good for the Badgers.
Class 4A, Brooklyn got 2 really big wins over Gosnell team that has. Is it fair to say Gosnell has, especially moving up to Class 4A for the most part this year, have overachieved?
Yeah,
and then Brooklyn, that's what I would think too. And Brooklyn got 2 really big wins over them, 6-2 on Tuesday, 12-2, both baseball and softball notched 2 big wins over Gosnell, both on a Tuesday and a Thursday of last week. Now, I know Brooklyn, they did take one on the chin to Marion on Friday, but that conference, really on both sides, just kind of doing some research for both baseball and softball. That one's going to be fun to watch unfold. Jared and I have had a lot of conversations on the softball side of it, and 2 massive wins there for Brooklyn in 1 week in a span of 2 days.
Yeah, and Highland started out the year 12-0. They're 18-2 right now. A lot of that's competition that they should be able to take care of. Gosnell swept them coming into conference play, but Brooklyn, they've been one of the best teams in 4A for the past. Let's go back 6 years to 2019. Coach Bill Taylor built a great program there. Got to the semifinals a couple years ago. They just haven't been able to get over the edge right there. So really looking forward to that. How about Shiloh Christian, Kyle? Shiloh Christian is 4-0, 13 straight wins. I lost count because, they just keep rolling right now. So them and Gentry are sitting atop the 1-4A right now. And Alan Gum really has the Saints playing really, really well. Anthony Nail at Gentry, Drew Nash went over 200 strikeouts for his career. So congratulations to Drew. And then Gravett. Gravett's 4-0 as well. The standings, these 2, Gravett and Gentry, played a non-conference matchup earlier in the year that counted as a conference matchup for some reason on Scorebook Live, but we'll not look at that. But yeah, Gentry, Gravett, Shiloh Christian up there in the 1. I'm gonna skip the 4 and go straight to the 5 north in Class 4A. Talked to Coach Isaac Delaney. He's like, look, the next 3 weeks are going to be really telling. You can either make the regional, which would almost put you in the driver's seat to get to the state tournament because the 5 South is weak. Let's just call it like it is. No offense to Bauxite and Fountain Lake. They're going to be 1 and 2, or Malvern. But Morrilton has started to play really well. Mike Lee's team is, they lost 2 to Harding Academy. Then they started to put the drum to everybody. So they're 5-2 right now. Harding Academy 6-1. They did split with Robinson earlier in the season. And then you got Pulaski Academy at 3-2. CAC, they're good to upset somebody at some point. So they beat Robinson. Then Morrilton beat CAC twice. So a lot of things to work out over the next 3 weeks in the 5 north of Class 4A. Stuttgart and Southside in the 6. Wynn has really fallen off right now. I don't really know what's going on. They got all the talent in the world. Gray Westbrook, there's no reason they should, be sitting in 4th place right now behind Lone Oak and, Southside. Stuttgart's been playing well. Not really concerned about them. They've been on the outside looking in. Arkadelphia, how about the Badgers? If you don't give them much attention, they're going to prove you wrong, let me tell you. So, sitting on top of the 7-4A right now at 6-0. They beat everybody they needed to. Beat the Queen. They beat Magnolia. Magnolia's 2-4 with Camden Fairview. So Nashville and the Queen have some making up to do in that conference. And then the 8, you got Crossit and Warren sitting on top. I really like Warren.
To say, I came across Colby Pope had a really big game in that 2-1 win over Monticello.
Yeah, and in Monticello, they made the playoffs last year as the 2nd team from that 4A South region. They're going to be trouble. So, the 8's really kind of working out like we thought it would with Crossit and Warren. Warren was ranked last week. They just need to keep playing well, and they'll be in a good shape come playoff time.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that Arkadelphia because that was one 4-3 over Magnolia on Tuesday, and then also beat the Panthers again. 4-3 and then 3-1. So yeah, every year it seems like Arkadelphia. I know you might I think there's been years where you've had them preseason ranked and they might have struggled a little bit out of the gate and picked it up.
Injuries,
injuries happen and all that. So yeah, he just. you never know. So, and then also on Monday, so yesterday, technically, Malvern got a 4-3 win over Woodlawn. I know that's a 4A over a 2A school, but still, Woodlawn, a highly ranked team. So definitely wanted to give the Leopards credit on that. So 3A, I know on Monday DeWitt had the win, which I know, 11-6 over Monticello. That's again, I know it's kind of Crossit and Warren in that league, but that was a 3A over a 4A that I had in my notes here. But I don't have a lot from 3A last week. I know as far as some of the teams that we have seen in the Super 7, Smackover and Woodlawn play this week, along with Manila and Newport there in the Northeast region.
Yeah, we'll start from the bottom of the state and work our way up right there. So Rising's going to play Drew Central this week. Then they're off on Thursday because Lake Village Lakeside doesn't have a team, so they got to go Drew Central and then DeWitt next week. So between now and next Wednesday, we'll probably know who the 8-3A champion is going to be. Ashdown got a really big win over Genoa Central on Monday. That puts them in the driver's seat in the 7. They're 5-0 right now. Of course, Ashdown is the number 1 ranked team in Class 3A right now. Smackover playing well of late. Them and Bismarck are holding down the 3 and 4 spots right now. I'm not going to give, the 6-3A is in the central part of the state, kind of eastern part. Maumelle Charters 4-0, 16-3 overall. They were ranked in the PBR poll over some teams that would beat the brakes off of them. And no offense to Maumelle Charter, they're playing well. They beat Horizon earlier in the season. So, the 5 and the 6 in Class 3A a little bit weaker. They're going to have to surprise some people, later in the year. Charleston is finally playing up to the level that I thought they would. They're 5-0 in the 4-3A right now, 9-3 overall. They beat Booneville. Shout out to my man Glenn Parrish. Sorry that Chucktown beat up on the Bearcats, but Costatote River also beat Booneville last week, so tough couple of days for the Bearcats. All right, you were talking about the northeast part of the state with Manila, Newport, Harrisburg, Walnut. Rivercrest has all of a sudden come back to life, Kyle, after losing their first
I noticed
10
that
games of the year. They've gotten 3 wins lately, so they're 3-5 in conference play right now. Still got a shot to, anything can happen because these teams play district tournaments. Anything can happen, but Manila still hanging on to that top spot. Newport showing they have some staying power. They're 7-2 right now. So theoretically, they're tied with Manila for the top spot right there. So still got a lot to work through right there, with the 5 teams, Manila, Newport, Harrisburg, Walnut Ridge, and Rivercrest. Those are your top 5 in the 3-3A, which will determine which 4 go to the regional. And then Melbourne got their first loss of the year. And guess what? It was in conference play. I could not believe it. They lost to the Cave City Cavemen. Shout out to the Cavemen, taking down the Bearcats, beat them 4-3 on Monday. So that was a huge win for Cave City. They're 8-2 in the 2-3A right now. It was a little bit shocking, but not really. Melbourne's played a light schedule, even though they won their first 14 games of the year. And then the final in the 1-3A, the Elkins Elks, undefeated right now. They beat Providence Academy on Monday. They're rolling right now. They're sitting in first place. Greenland's right behind them as they move up from 2 to 3. Still taking some lumps, but Coach Larkin's bunch, they're going to be pretty good by the end of the year. They got some senior leadership this year that we really highlighted 2 years ago as sophomores behind the plate and in center field.
I'm glad you mentioned, because I actually had that in my notes that I was on the next page, so I almost missed it. But Cave City, I wanted to give a shout out to the Cavemen because they're going through some tough times right now with the weather. A couple of weeks ago, really got some damage to the whole town. So I know they're enduring a lot. So really good to see that they're doing well. Also, another team that experienced that in Class 2A here, Riverside. Lake City, I know, is another town that is really hurting from those storms. But what a win over Valley View Class. And I know that's one you and I talked about. It's not only is it a 2A over a 5A, it's Valley View that's been one of the overall state's best teams over the past however many years. But this is a really, really good Riverside team too. I know that you've heard a lot of great things and seen a lot of great things out of Zane McClure. He went 6 innings. I think actually, he went complete. Or did he pitch a complete game, or I guess someone came in and closed for him?
Yeah, they had somebody come in and close.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So he went 6 innings. I wasn't sure if it was 6 or 7. Then only gave up 3 runs and struck out 5, and also had a hit. Went 1 of 3. So there's a reason why Riverside's. And I know this was the 2A number 1 over 5A number 1, but Kevin, this is a really, really good Rebel squad.
Absolutely. And, talking to some coaches that, 5A that have seen Riverside, because they've played up in classification quite a few times this year. They said Zane McClure could beat a lot of 3A and 4A teams on the mound. And I'm talking about in a state tournament type game. So they're that good. He hits in the 2-hole. He was 1 for 3. Yeah. Valley, and you can look at this loss a few different ways. Parker King had a rough outing on the mound, but Jade Taylor came in and threw 4 no-hit innings, had like 6 strikeouts for Valley View. Valley View just couldn't find their identity. One of the biggest things about Valley View is they're kind of, and believe it or not, still trying to find who they are post Slade Caldwell. Slade was a big part of that team for 4 years. So for Riverside to get that, program defining win, I wouldn't go that far, because they still have a lot more to play for this year. And I think, their coaching staff would say the same thing, and their kids would say the same thing. It's good to beat those guys. It's good to get those wins to set you up to play even tougher competition in postseason, because anything can happen in the postseason. We've seen it over the last couple of years in Class 2A. So, yeah, Riverside, I just love the way they play right now. They're just going to be tough to beat at any point. So, Corning is still undefeated in that conference, but if you look at what Riverside did to Rector 17-0, Cross County 10-0, they got McCrory coming up. That's an out of conference matchup. So they're playing the best Cedar Ridge. They're going to take on Cedar Ridge, and then they finish up with Pocahontas, Westside, Brooklyn. So yeah, they're going to take care of business in conference. Riverside is, and then they're just going to go get better. So I really love to see that. Back to Cedar Ridge. They're sitting on top of the 2-1A right, or the 2-2A right now at 5-0. Lifeway Christian in the 1. The 1's always been the conference that you don't pay too much attention to. We get a lot of good information from our guys, Neil Denton, up in that part of the state. Cotter played really well. I think they beat Ozark Catholic, but they're 6-1 right now. Sets up another Lifeway Christian Cotter, championship matchup for that conference. We talked about the 3. Hackett keeps rolling along. The Hornets, they're 7-0 in conference play. They should roll right through that conference, no problem. Conway Christian, I had some people saying I wasn't talking about the football state champions enough. So let's give Conway Christian their due. They're 3-0 right now in the 5-2A. Them in Southside B Branch. B Branch was ranked preseason top 5 or 6. So look, it's going to be those two coming down to the wire in the 5-2A. The winner of that game is going to see who gets the number 1 seed and who gets the number 2 seed going into the district tournament. Palestine Wheatley rolling right now, 6-0. They played some tough competition. They lost to Maumelle on spring break. Them and McCrory. Palestine Wheatley's already got 1 up on them. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago in the show. But they're sitting at the top of the conference right now at 6-0. McCrory 6-1, and then Carlisle is 6-2 right now. Carlisle's both losses, McCrory and Palestine Wheatley. So Murfreesboro and the Rattlers were rolling right along. Of course, our team-funded player of the week this week was from Murfreesboro. Spring Hill jumped up in the extra innings. It was 8 innings, wasn't it, Kyle?
Yeah. The 8 innings. Yep.
8 innings. So, yeah, Murfreesboro, Spring Hill. Spring Hill, of course, got to the 2A state championship game in 2018. They lost to Parker's Chapel that year. Spring Hill looks to be – the Bears are back on the roar down there in South Arkansas. And then the 8-2A, Parker's Chapel, the Trojans, who we just mentioned, they're sitting at the top of the conference right now, tied with, of course, Woodlawn. Woodlawn's had some tough out-of-class losses. They're 19-5 overall. Ouachita's finding their way. This is about the time last year the Warriors started going on a run. They're 4-1 in conference right now. Their loss was to Parker's Chapel, I believe, in conference play. So, same teams. Got to look out for them, Class 2A.
Yeah, I'll go back to Brody Maroon real quick. Our Team Funded Player of the Week, 9 of 14, 6 runs scored, 14 RBI, or actually it was 15 RBI. Coach McCray, when I was confirming the stats, he confirmed that it was actually 15 RBI, and then 6 doubles, had 2 grand slams, and also pitched a complete game. I think that was against Mountain Pine. He had like 13 strikeouts. Yeah. I'd completely missed that one. I had gone through his offensive stuff, and I'd completely missed that part. So, yeah.
That's what we want in a player of the week, Kyle. So,
yes.
I mean, he just did everything.
Yep. That's what we look for. I mean, I think a lot of my softball ones, it's like we've had a lot of pitchers, or not necessarily like ace pitchers always, but one, because usually your best player is going to pitch sometimes too out of necessity, regardless if it's baseball or softball. Yeah. And the 1, 2, and 3A, there's no question. But yeah, Brody, we've covered him a lot, and he's done great for the Rattlers and football. That the Rattlers went under Coach Chesser for the past 2 years. Had 2 phenomenal, so only like 1 loss in conference play, and he's been a big part of that. So congratulations to Brody, going to play at Arkansas Rich Mountain, going to play next level. So, and then last but not least in Class 1A, we'll start with our top 5 matchup from last week. The Viola Longhorns, number 5, took down number 2 Greers Ferry Westside Greers Ferry, however you want to put it, 3-1. Big game from Seth Worsham, 7 innings, so it went the distance. Struck out 9, also went 2 for 2 and stole a bag. And Lincoln Hickman also had multiple hits and stole a bag himself. So a huge win there in the 1A2 for the Longhorns.
Yeah, that's right. These guys played earlier in the year, had a shootout. It was 14-10 in that game. So doesn't really surprise me that Viola came back and won. We knew coming back they had a lot of talent coming back off that team. Over the last 2 years, they got a lot of experience. And, Viola kicked the ball around a little bit in that game. They had a couple of errors. So they could have won that game, even more. So Westside, Shane Davis, they're going to bounce back. So I have no contact. Let's see. Gunnar Cowgill, I wanted to mention him real quick, hitting .615 for the year for the Longhorns. So Tucker Cowgill's hitting over 500 as well. He's hitting 533 on the year. So, some of these 1A, 2A classification numbers, they can get a little silly because, the best teams are going to play really well and their guys are going to put up great numbers. So, Team of the week, Class 1A, is definitely Viola Longhorns. St. Joe's, go down to the 5-1A real quick. They beat Nemo Vista last week. That'll pretty much hand them the conference right there. Scranton beat Magazine, so Scranton possibly find their way into the outside looking in, the Super 7 rankings. Coming out a little bit later this week. They'll be up definitely tomorrow on Fearless Friday. Armorell still rolling right along. They took it on the chin out of classification, but I really like the way the Tigers are playing right now. Them and Hillcrest are sitting undefeated right now. Norfolk's going to win the 1A since they moved up there. They're playing really well. But then, Bearden surprised everybody last year, getting into I think they were the number 2 seed going out of the 1A South Regional last year and actually won a game in the state playoffs, I believe. They're sitting in the top 4-0 right now with Taylor Tigers, number 1 team, and then Mount Ida. The dream season came to an end. They were undefeated, and then they got beat. They got beat 26-21 by Danville.
Yeah. Oh, I saw I saw that score the other day. Man, yeah, that was gosh. I couldn't remember. I remember Danville had a really high scoring game. I couldn't remember which team it was, but
yeah. Now for Mount Ida, and I'll say this, that was their 4th game in a week. For a 1A team to play 4 games in a week is tough. Okay.
That's a lot.
They beat Blevins, they beat Foreman, they beat Mineral Springs. That was all. That's two conference games in Blevins and Mineral Springs in a non-conference matchup. But they lost 26-21 to Danville. So, I mean, Little John's no harm, no foul there. It's just I saw that score and I was like, you got to be kidding me. So, Class 1A, Mount Ida is still up there with Taylor. Be interested to see that Taylor Bearden matchup coming up. Can Bearden actually, keep it close because Taylor's been steamrolling everybody ever since they got back. They're supposed to play today, which is Tuesday the 15th. We'll definitely post about that on social media for sure.
Yeah, the Taylor machine just it keeps on rolling. They might not be having the same dominance necessarily. I mean, they are like against their conference teams in softball, but still, I mean, our number one team. It's truly incredible what that town has done. I can't say it enough. We harp on it all the time. It's just crazy to have that much success between two programs, but that's when you're born with a baseball and then a bat in your hand. I guess that's what's going to happen.
That's right.
But,
and they beat Spring Hill and Murfreesboro on spring break this year. So those are two really good wins over 2A programs. Lost to Ashdown and lost to DeQueen and Parker's Chapel. So there are 3 losses. Ashdown's number 1. Parker's Chapel's ranked in 2A, and then DeQueen, they're in the top 10 in Class 4A. So, Coach Fowler, kudos, keep it rolling.
Yeah, that's right, Coach Fowler. Which organization gave him the National Baseball the Coach of the Year?
ABCA, yeah,
ABCA, yeah, that's right. The main organization, yeah, the ABCA. I mean, he went to DC and everything, and or wherever it was, wherever that event was held, and was named the National Coach of the Year. So really cool deal for Coach Fowler there. But well, again, thank you to our sponsors, Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, Boom Boom Floor Shine, and Chinook Cedary for sponsoring the show. Also, make sure, as I said at the top, if you have not subscribed, hit that subscribe button on YouTube as well as the notification bell so you are notified anytime we release an episode. Also, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, we are there on the audio platforms. And Kevin, unless you got anything else, we'll go ahead and shut this baby down.
Yeah, we got a lot of good games coming up over the next couple of weeks. Weather should be a lot better, so if you're out, you don't have anything to do. Getting hot. So play a little hooky, get off work early. If you need a note, hit me up. I'll give you a note for excused absence for that afternoon. Go see some local high school baseball in your area.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm heading down to Melissa, Texas on Saturday to watch Bentonville and Melissa, and I'm really worried because the weather, AccuWeather's saying that it might be promising. The Weather Channel, which is usually not as reliable, is saying that it's going to be like thunderstorms all day. So that's my game I'm hitting this week, and it'll be a 4-ish hour road trip. So hopefully Mother Nature is kind to us. But well, that will do it for episode 68. Thank you all again for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. Take care.